All right, so this is a PC. Okay, well, today is the last lecture when it comes to stuff that you need to know for your finals. So everything that is in next week is not part of the finals. Okay, so everything until now will be in finals. So you should try to learn as much you can on until today from midterms onward. And so we'll discuss that. So I just want to say that final up to here is before that is finals. This is not week 10 is not part of finals. So not part of finals. However, in week 10, actually we'll solve some questions relevant for finals so that you know you have practice for finals. So on the second half of the class, we'll always solve some example questions. So you'll have so many practice for finals so that at least for all long questions, you have solved similar questions. You have done it already for homework, but we'll give you more questions. So that's next week. And as you notice, I extended the homework due date on Thursday. So you have more times to work on it. And also you probably will notice, even you try to submit on Friday, it will allow you because I increase the grace period. It will just show that late submission, but I will not give you any penalty because I know it's a Thanksgiving. You might have, I don't want you to work on homework while your dinner is being prepared. I want you guys to help your family. Okay. So it's just, I just want to see statistics of how many students need that extra time for Friday. So even if you submit by Friday midnight, it's not going to, no points will be taken off. So you have more times. And also the reason I did that is not just for Thanksgiving. I uploaded some example questions which are very similar to homework so that you solve them. We'll solve some of them today in the class so that you get practice for finals, number one. Number two, you also get more example practice for your homework questions, which will be graded. And yeah, I just want you to do well on this homework because this is the homework that has 2 long questions for your finals. I want you to spend time on it. Homework 6 will be released today. In fact, it's released already. There will be no extension, but there is a trick here. This homework 6 is not going to be graded. So your effort is 100%. So I want you guys to submit by Thursday because it doesn't matter right or wrong answer. You got to try. Okay. So don't ask for extension from that. No submission is 0. Okay. And we'll solve some question, very similar question in the air quality today. Quiz 3 is next week, December 1 and 2nd. So because I'll release on 1. So you have more than 24 hours to take that quiz. That'll be on topic, everything after the midterms until today. Okay, so that's everything short questions relevant for the finals. Okay, so this will help you prepare for those conceptual question in final. This is homework. There are only 4 questions. These questions are very similar to examples. And as you can notice, these numbers are actually from, so these 2 questions, we solve it related to, let's see. Yeah, this is related to waste management. First 2 questions, we already solved it, example question before. So we'll have more practice on that. And these 2 are related to air quality. So, and you will know how to do this one today in this class. These are just, this question are simple in the sense, you just put the equation and put the numbers and you'll get the answers. There is nothing else there. I just want to again mention that I increased the enrollment to 70 because I see that it's getting full, see 164. So just in case, I just want to, this will not increase beyond 70 because the class size, the room size is 75. So will not increase any more than 70. So if you have not enrolled, enroll it soon so that then you will be on waiting list unless somebody drop out or not enroll. then you will not be able to take this class. Again, it's not required that you have to take this class. It's just mentioning. So today we are going to learn about air quality modeling. Air quality modeling means, how do you know how much pollutions you are inhaling at any point, whether living inside the room or when you go to restaurants eating, how much viruses, all that dust that you are inhaling. And if you are living in a location which has air pollutions like Los Angeles, if there is a traffic, how much air pollution. So we'll solve some question today, and also I'll give more example question next week for your finals. So the next week will be basically we are solving a lot of example question, but also first half is about application of everything we learn on sustainability. So we'll see how this is applied. Those are not part of final, but the second half will have some example question you will solve here in this class. I'll not solve, it will just help you solve. So then I'll put it here so that you get more practice through your friends. Okay, so air quality modeling, the reason why it is important is because of, you already know this one. You notice this barrier. When you go to restaurants during COVID time, they put this barrier with intention to decrease pollutions or decrease inhalation of viruses. And it's the reason why it is effective, at least to some extent, is because when you are speaking with somebody, your friends, you are basically throwing all those virus, all the droplets. It will travel at least 3-4 feet. So if having that barrier will just takes out lots of those droplets. But if there is a wind, that's obviously with time they will go up and then they will disperse. So this is this is just minimize the risk a little bit. It's not really preventing to have the COVID infections. But this is best we can do. This the both economy as well as the human aspect of it. So then, is it sufficient to be 6 feet apart? How safe it is to have a barrier? All that you can calculate all that. So we did that last class. This is just another example. I put it here so that you can do the calculations. So for instance, if you want to calculate, assume the release from a person is at a height of 5.5 feet, 1.7 meter above the ground. If a person is standing height of 5 feet, let's say this is person standing, okay, and this is 5.5 feet. This person speak loudly, and then is basically virus is emitted. So you want to know how far it will travel, or what's the before it settle, or how long it will take before it settle, assuming there is no upward movement. So droplet size is d, particle size is 5 micrometers. You are not looking at the coronavirus size because viruses are not individually, they are there when you speak. It's just mostly the droplet which has virus. You're not releasing single virus like that. So you don't have to account for the virus size, it's the droplet. So 5 micrometers, and then you calculate how long before it settles, assuming there is no wind speed, there is no turbulence, all that. So time is basically distance or the height. Let's say this is height. So time will be whatever height it has to settle, velocity of settling velocity. So settling velocity is basically acceleration due to gravity, density of particles, and then diameter square divided by 18 mu. Mu is the viscosity of air. So if you put that one, it will be 18 you can calculate the time based on, because G is acceleration due to gravity, which is 9.8 meter per second square. So the answer would be in second. Okay. If you write everything else in the correct units. So based on that, you can see that these droplets will stay suspended in air for a longer time than you stay inside the restaurants. And so that's the reason, even somebody just there, many people sitting inside the restaurants, they will have emitted so much virus particle, the dose, that that entire room will be filled with viruses, unless the circulation system shock those air and refill with clean air. And those air is filtered by HEPA filter that will catch all these viruses, kill them. So that means the air will stay fresh. So that's why it's very important inside those restaurants, they have this big circulation system. How quickly they can circulate would help maintain that clean air. So again, these are things we discuss. I just want to put it here. What the mask does is basically filtering the droplet. It doesn't filter the viruses directly, because virus size are 100 nanometers. The pore size in this mask is much bigger than that. So that means any 100 micron particle will not be filtered. But because there is no virus, they are basically in droplet. That's why risk is low. You are basically filtering those droplets. And virus itself will not survive on the for a long time on the surface. Within like a few hours, they will die. And their survivability is low on any surface. So that's why initially we didn't know all those things. So we really spend a lot of time cleaning all the surface, which is fine, but it's not necessarily the most effective way. The effective transition is our exposure is through air, not through the touching. But obviously, if there is somebody has saliva which has viruses, they will survive. So it's good to clean hand, because you might be somebody just might have dropped the viruses there. So that's why it's good to clean. Just know that your priority is mask. So what happened after getting infected with coronavirus? There's a YouTube video, you can check how it works, all that, for your own knowledge. So a lot of times we discuss about air quality related to lung disease, and we talk about a lot about how different location in the lung will have these issues. But lung, anything you also those pollutants that you inhale can also infect your other organs or affects your other organs, because some of those chemicals, for instance, gas, ozone, sulfur dioxides, chloroform is basically a solvent that's used, and also a lot of the solvents, they can also dissolve in our blood from lung, because lungs basically takes oxygen, dissolve it in blood, and that's how it circulates through our body. And every other organs receive that blood. So that's how you get those contaminants, for instance, carbon tetrachloride. Those are used in refrigerators. Now they're not so much, they change that fluid, but those can affect livers and other locations. So all these things you see, chloroform, carbon tetrachlorides, tetrachloroethylene, these are all solvent, because they're used for different purpose. So now those are related to different pollutions that we talk about. But when you think of air, I just want to mention air is a open environment. It's a open systems. Anything released is part of atmosphere, so they can migrate for long distance. So it's not just about short range transport like inside restaurants. You have to also think of, like for instance, I'm speaking right now here. The entire room is filled with things that comes out of my mouth. That's why I have to use a mask. But the ventilation system in UCLA is pretty good. They increase that rate, so that's why it accounts for how quickly this air is circulated. But outside we don't have choice. Everything is atmosphere is part of our air. So if LA climate or LA air quality is poor, everybody will have access to the same air. You can't change that. Okay, so that means we are all inhaling that. So that's why you have a collective responsibility to maintain the air quality. So let's first talk about indoor air quality. How do you prevent poor air quality in indoor, because that's what you can control by using the filter and the HEPA filters as well as the circulations. What HEPA filter does is basically it is it's a filter, of course, but it is not just filter. It has charge on the surface. So many virus particles, they can stick on the charged surface, because many particulates can be charged as when it pass through a high voltage, and then that's how you can remove a lot of those fine particles. So those HEPA filter has filters the surface which is very charged, so that means it can remove many more particles than just the mask. Mask is not charged, it's just a neutral surface. And then also if you circulate, air has quicker rate. So let's see what are the different types of pollutants you expect. So first of all, coronavirus was not there before, right? So we didn't think of that, but these are the common legacy pollutants indoors. Number one is asbestos, other fibers, aerosols. Asbestos is no longer used, but if you are living in old buildings, all the pipe insulations, sometimes cement, the coatings of some of the materials has asbestos. They are usually removed now, so you can't, I mean, it's illegal to have asbestos because it's a cause lung cancers. But there are some remaining in the old buildings. So when they are broke down, you have to remove them, treat them as a hazardous waste. Carbon monoxide is always being produced. Every time you cook, you produce carbon monoxides because it's incomplete combustion of carbon. Okay. So those anytime you again smoking, anything you do, anytime there is a fire, there is carbon monoxide. Formaldehyde is a solvent. Every time you use a kind of let's say if you use a paint, that's one way. Even when you are using nail polish to clean it, those are solvent. So that's why it's important not to inhale too much. Okay, so you got to have open environment. But it's also how much dose you are inhaling. It's not the daily basis you are doing it. So those are the places. Carpet, plywood, all those stuff which is require any kind of coatings. Then you also inhale particulates. If somebody is smoking, you are inhaling those. If you are vacuuming, you are inhaling. In fact, microplastics is another thing. All these carpet has very small fibers. So every time you walk, we are basically taking some of those fiber up. Nitrogen dioxide, again, we talk about is by burning. Sulfur dioxide, NOx, SOx, COX. Here X could be 1, 2, this kind of number of oxygen. Okay. Ozones are produced mostly, ozone is very reactive, so it doesn't get produced unless there is a very reactive environment, which is basically spark. If you have electric, that's why if you have electrostatic air cleaner, that electricity itself, cause the spark, that oxygen will react with that and produce ozone. Ozone require high energy for productions. That's why it is produced in our poor atmosphere with UV lights. Okay. Radon, we'll discuss about radon. Radon is produced naturally because you have radioactive materials in ground, natural uraniums that will decay to radons, and that's how radon is produced. Sulfur dioxide, again, it says space heater, kerosene. These are things when you burn, it has. Then you have volatile organics. That is from many things. This is where daily use products. Nail polish removers, that could be one. Deodorants, cleaning agents, all those things you can see over here. Again, these are all the source of pollutants, but radon gas is particularly important for Culver City because some locations has radon. So the reason why radon is produced is because uraniums, as you see over here, that's the half-life of uranium. 4.4 billion years ago, it's produced. That's basically when Earth is made. And then they break down to radium. That will last The half-life is 1600 years. So this radian, that's the 226 is the atomic weight numbers. And then radon will, that will break down to radon, 222. That's basically the atomic numbers or the weight. And the half-life of radon is 3.8 days. So that means in 3.8 days it will break down. And when it breaks down, it radiates alpha and gamma. Gamma is the radiations. Alpha is basically helium, ionized helium atom. Okay, so this is alpha means helium, ionized helium. Okay, so that's the that alpha radiation is very, it can be you can remove alpha radiation by a single piece of paper, anything that can block it. Okay, so just by having a cloth itself is also protection for alpha, but gamma radiations, nothing can block it. So radiations, energy, high energy, so it can penetrate our body. So it's the gamma radiation that's toxic to us. So that's why people with a constant radiation of radon or radon that can develop cancer because of that gamma ray. Okay. So again, radon will break down to polonium in 3 minutes. So the half-life of polonium is 3 minutes. So that will decay, and polonium will decay to lead. And as you can see, when it decay to lead half-life is 27 minutes. That will radiate beta decay. Beta is a neutrons, and again gamma decay in 27 minutes. That's the half-life. Then lead will be changed to bismuth. Bismuth will poloniums, and then lead, other things. So as you see, every time it breaks down from here, they are releasing these gamma radiations. So that means constantly you are in hell, you are exposed to these radiations if there is a radon gas. And so obviously, if you're just few days, it's not a factor. But if you are living in a home which has constant radon, you are basically incubating in radioactivity. So that's the reason. It's pretty serious things, and how we can prevent it. The way it works is the way to prevent is to design this this barrier in a way that can protect this radon gas to get into your buildings. So there should not be any crack, there should not be any fracture. So you'll put this kind of a barrier on the surrounding, because anything exposed to atmosphere is fine. The concentration is so diluted, it's not be affecting you. But because you are living inside home, the concentration will build up. That's why it's very important to prevent that radon gas to get in. Okay, so that's the design. So you can check online how the people do all those things. So basically, all these, the house has to be designed specifically. And second thing, what you want to do is you want to have good circulation system. Your window has to be big, and so that way you are basically anything coming, you are just diluting them as quickly as possible. So the first is the foundations. You want to protect the foundations so that there is no gas coming in from bottom. So now let's say you want to calculate how much radon gas in your home. There are a couple of things that could influence it. So this is the mass balance. Again, same way. Let's write about what those different terms are. Again, mass balance is rate of increase inside the box model, that's basically your home, is equal to how much pollution that coming into the box because of the wind. Okay, and then how much pollutants leaving the system because of wind, because you are just air is coming in and going, right? So that's the advections. So those first two are related to that. The third one is the reaction term. So this is the reaction term. Okay. So the reaction term is basically how much is being reacted to. That could be productions. That could be, let's write this one. Production and reactions, or decay. Just going to write it decay so that you know. But it means that production means you are not producing, but it's things are source is there. Radon is coming. because of the soil itself. Decay is because that radiation is being decayed, so they're removed by just self-destroying. So there are two terms. So this could be plus or minus. If it is production, it's a plus. So decay is a minus. So that's how. So this is the left side. Net change in concentration times volume is total mass of things inside the room. So this is inside the room. This is source, amount of stuff that's coming in, because there are a source inside the room. For instance, you are burning gas, you are cooking. Source is inside the room, so that's the source. Okay, how much stuff's coming out from that. Then this is a whatever coming in. Okay, so this is in, this is out. So that's basically concentrations times volume. And this here there is a term called N. That usually you put a flow rate, right? So a lot of times you put a flow rate for most of the mass balance equations. Here that N is the how many times you are emptying the air. So instead of flow rate, you are basically circulation rate. How many times you are replacing that air. So in hour, how many times you are just emptying that air. So that's basically flow rate, volume over time. So this N is written here, number of air changes per hour. Okay, so SEH. Okay, number of air changes per hour. That's the N. That's the same as flow rate. Okay, because it's basically volume of air, because the volume of the entire rooms, and then how many times it changes per hour. So that's the flow rate in a way. And Ca is the concentrations of pollutants in the air, because if you are taking air from outside, that concentration you are receiving. So this is coming in. Okay. And then what's leaving the system is what is inside the system. That's always the assumption you make. So what leaving the system is concentrations. What is inside the room is going to leave the system. So that's basically same thing, concentrations times N times V. That's the flow rate, same number of flow rate. This is out. And then there is a rate at which they are degrading. And again, this is assumed that first order decay. So that's why, this is basically minus is for decay. And then volume times dC by dt, right? The decay rates. And where dC by dt minus kc. This is basically first order decay. Okay. So when you put this dC by dk, then you get these answers. So now we have to solve this one. And I'm not going to solve it, but I'm going to put the number here. So when you solve it, the answer is this. Okay. So that means at any time, concentrations will be a factor of two things. There are two terms here, if you realize. One is because of Ca. Ca is basically whatever the pollutants coming in is also going to decay at certain rate. So that's why that first term is all about that, whatever coming in from outside and certain source. Okay, so there is a S term here, source, and then there is just things coming in. Then the second term is more about what is already in the system. In your room, if there is a previously when you start counting, there may be some pollutant already in the room. So that C0 is initial. This is initial condition, initial concentrations in room. Basically when time equal to 0, t equal to 0. So technically there are three terms. One is for source, another is for what is coming in, another is for what is already there to begin with. So those three terms will determine how much concentrations would be in the room at any time. Okay. And there is a special case for steady state. Steady state means the concentrations is dc by dt equal to 0. When it happens because if you leave it there for long times, there will be equilibrium. Whatever coming in, some of them reacted and some of them leaving, so the concentration doesn't change over time. That will happen usually when the time is infinity. Means if you wait long enough, that there will be equilibrium. So that's why it's written C infinity. That means t equal to infinity. If you wait long enough, you can calculate that. If you put this one C infinity, basically you are rearranging. So this is 0. That means I'm going to write it here. So if you put dc by dt equal to 0, S plus Ca n V minus C infinity, because that's the concentrations in the room, and V minus K C infinity. It's going to erase this one so that it's easy to know. And when you rearrange this, you get these answers. C infinity, that you solve for C infinity, that's how you get. The reason is that time equal to long time, if you wait, you can assume that the concentration inside the room is not going to change, because it's going to achieve that steady state. So that's all. So if you know these equations, you can solve any questions in the final related to indoor concentrations. The trick question will be here, the identifying what is given, what is not given. Okay. So just know that C0 is initial concentrations, Ca is the ambient concentrations that's coming outside, and S is the source. And based on how it is written, you can decide whether Ca equal to 0, S equal to 0. Sometimes initial concentration will be 0. So some of the terms will be 0 in your questions. So you got to think of which one is 0 based on how it is written. And other trick would be because K will be given, N will be given, because N is the circulation rate, or sometimes you solve for the circulation rate. To achieve certain concentration, how many times you have to circulate. So that's the questions. And a lot of times the concentration of contaminants will not be given in the form that you need, but you can convert them to different form based on what you learned in the very first class. So for instance, any pollution, any pollutants in air, if you remember ideal gas law, PV equal to N RT. R is constant, T is temperature, pressure, this is atmospheric pressure, this is volume. So concentration, which is basically, this is moles of pollutants. So number of moles per pollutant per volume is concentrations. Okay. I'm going to write it clearly so that it's easy to see. So concentrations is basically N by V is P by RT, partial pressure over RT. So you can change the concentration to one to another if you know this kind of numbers. So N, the unit of N is moles. Okay. If you know molecular weight, you can change to milligram per liter. Just divide that by molecular weight. Okay. Sometimes the concentration will be given in ppm per volume, which means this is mole. The unit of this one is moles per liter or moles per. Usually for air quality, nobody talk about liter because liter is so small. People talk about cubic meter. So this is basically would be meter cube. But sometimes, because I'm talking about this one here, I'm going to write it again. So sometimes the concentration is given in ppm. That's very common. Okay, ppm by volume. That means it's saying, let's say the concentration of carbon monoxide is 15 ppm by volume. What that means is you have 15 meter cube of carbon monoxide in 1 million meter cube of air. Okay, 15 parts per million. Okay, so what that means? That means the volume of carbon monoxide is given. Okay, and so that means you have to change that to basically the other concentrations. So here, if you see, instead of N by V, you are given that numbers. So check the example book example to see how it is converted, so that you can see those are all written there. Okay, so there are some special case. As you see, this is a big equations. If you steady state means you can, let's say there is no decay, means you are saying that there is a pollutant that doesn't degrade. So that means K equal to 0. Okay, K equal to 0 means it's not decaying inside. Okay, so if you put K equal to 0 in this entire equation, that will break down to this value. Okay, so all you are doing is every time you see K, that value put equal to 0. Okay, and it become more simplified, then it's become that. And then also in this particular case, as you can see, conservative case, and then Ca equal to 0, which is basically clean air coming in. You are assuming that outside air is basically not polluted. So that's why you see there is no Ca. So this Ca becomes 0, and this K equal to 0. If you put those values, you get this answer. And if you assume that there is no initial concentration, that means your house was not polluted to begin with. When the time you start rotating, then this is basically C0 equal to 0. So this is the case you can use. So no initial concentration means C0 equal to 0. So this is the answer for no decay, no clean air coming in, and then there is no initial concentration. So that means this is something you can use. One example of that is, imagine smoking. If somebody starts smoking inside the room, what's the concentration after a certain time? Because you can assume that there is no smoke coming from outside, and smoke or whatever that you are producing is not decaying within the time frame. And so that means now you are calculating how much you are going to inhale. So this is smoking in room. You can use this equation. So S is the source, like how much a person is smoking. So that means you can see that smoking, whatever that person is smoking, divided by volume, because that's going to dilute the entire system, because your room is going to fill with that smoke. So the dilution is there. But then it's going to decay over a certain time because of the circulation, so the N. So if there is no circulations, this term is 0, right? This term is N equal to whatever that whole room, So that means you are having everything inside. So because of circulation, you are just removing some part of it. That's why it's decreasing with time. So this is and so now to answer these questions in homework, you need the K value. A lot of times those are not given. Just say that this is the contaminant. So what you want to do is go back to this table number 15, identify which pollutants that homework is talking about. Just look for that K value. Okay. For radon, as you can see, the K value is very, very small. It's not decaying. as quickly. And then another thing you need to know is the source, right? The source term. So this is the K term and this is the source term. Let's say you have a gas oven. You're producing at certain rate carbon monoxide. So this is the S term in that equation. For kerosene heater, for cigarette, now this is another way. So this is the source term in your questions. Everything else is kind of given. So let's solve this question. So it's easy to identify the question if you know it's an unvented portable radiant heaters fueled with kerosene is tested under controlled laboratory conditions. So it gives you all the information so that you know what's the source, what type of source, what is being produced. After running the heater for 2 hours, so the time is given, okay, 2 hours. So this is time. The test chamber with certain volume. So this is volume. An infiltration rates of 0.25 air circulation rate per hour. Okay, so this is N. How many times you are circulating air? In an hour, you are basically emptying only 25% of the room. So it takes 4 hours to completely empty the rooms. The concentration of carbon monoxide reaches, so the contaminant is given, CO. Okay, that means you know the K value. So contaminant is CO, then the K value is 0. Okay. That means once it's in atmosphere in carbon monoxide, it's not going to decay. That's the reason you have the carbon monoxide monitor inside your room, because it just accumulate. There is no escape route unless you open the door. Okay. So carbon, it says that after 2 hours, after running the heater for 2 hours, the concentrations of carbon monoxide reaches 20 ppm. Okay, 20 ppm. So the concentration is 20 ppm. Usually when the concentration is written that way, because it's not milligram per liter, it's by volume. Okay, so you have to change to moles per meter cube. So what is this in moles per meter cube or milligram per meter cube? Check the example, book example. This is book example. So you see, so you just have to use that equation, PV equal to nRT, and then molecular weight of carbon monoxide, which is carbon is 12 plus oxygen is 16, so it's 28 gram per mole. You have to use that to change to moles per meter cube. Check the answers now so that you know. But just assume that you convert that using the examples. Initial carbon dioxide concentration in the lab is 0. So basically it's saying that C0 equal to 0. That term here, C0, this term is initial concentration is 0. And the ambient carbon monoxide level is negligible throughout the run. That means, the air that coming in from outside is also doesn't have carbon monoxide. So that means, or negligible. So that means you can say that Ca equal to also 0. Okay. Treating carbon monoxide as a conservative pollutant. So that's K equal to 0. That's already said it. Find the rate at which the heater emits carbon monoxide. So it's basically saying how much emissions happens by the heater. If the heater were to be used in a small home to heat 120 meter cube space, having 0.4 ACH, predict the steady state concentrations. Okay, so first thing is the source. What's the emission rate? Again, put all you know is the K equal to 0, C0 equal to 0, and everything is 0. except the source. So this is number, right? Okay. So you know the CT. Okay, you know the CT that's given 20 ppm. You know N, you know the volume, you know the time because I said 2 hours. All you are solving for is S. Okay, what's the emission? So solve for S. So if I'm going to write this equation, S is equal to CT times NV divided by 1 minus everything else is given. Okay. So you can, yes. Okay. So let's see the milligram per meter cube. Let's try that one. Okay. So write milligram per meter cube. That's easier to write that way. Is basically you are saying how much carbon monoxide weight divided by volume of air. Okay. This is in milligram, right? Volume of air. So V is given, milligram of carbon monoxide is given. I'm going to write in a different, oh, here I can write it. That's easier. We have more space here. So meter cube of air. Thus you are trying, right? So if you milligram per meter cube, milligram of a milligram, 1000 milligram is 1 gram of carbon monoxide, right? Just changing to the unit the other way. So that then you know that 28 gram of carbon monoxide, because that's the molecular weight, 12 per 16, is 1 mole of carbon monoxide. This is equal to moles. Then okay, and this is partial pressure of RT is a constant. So if you know the temperature, you can get that number. So that means any times you want to change N over this, you can just multiply that constant, right? The whatever that constant is given. So partial pressure. So partial pressure is basically the same. The volume is also partial pressure. How much volume? Let's say 1 ppm. What does that means? 1 ppm means whatever the pressure of air, 1 million. If that's the 1 million, then 1 millionth of the pressure of air will be the concentration of the carbon monoxide. Let's say another example here. Let's write here. For instance, 20 ppm. So 20 ppm by volume means you have 20. What is the volume unit is, in 20, that's the carbon monoxide volume. So volume of carbon monoxide divided by volume of air. That's what it means. Okay. So that means this volume of air, this is same as partial pressure of carbon monoxide by partial pressure of air. Okay. So partial pressure of air. So you are calculating this value. Okay. So partial pressure of air is 1 atmosphere. This is 1 atmosphere. So I'm just going to write that here. 20 is basically this. So P carbon monoxide is 20 times partial pressure of air. Okay, 20 ppm. So that will be, let me write this one. Sorry, I'm just scrapping all this so that I'm going to write it properly. So this 20 ppm is, what is that means? 20 divided by 1 million, 10 to the power 6. Okay, so that means this is, if it is 20 meter cube volume of carbon monoxide, this will be 1 million meter cube. So that means in 1 million meter cube of air, you get 20 meter cube of this one. So this is basically 20 by 10 to the power 6 is this value. So PCO2 CO is basically 20 times 10 to the minus 6 times 1 atm. So when you put that value over there, P value on the top, you can get the answers. Okay, because if you put that P value over there, P over by RT, this number, you'll get moles per meter cube, and then you just divide by molecular weight. So there are too much calculation. So what it does, it in book, it account for RT and just put a constant, saying that all you have to do is multiply this constant times molecular weight. So that's why you can use that units. I'm just going to go to the book directly so that you can see where is it. The book didn't explain everything how it get there, so you can just use that constant unit. But you know how you get there by just using that. Let's see. Somewhere in that book. Okay, let's see the one. No. Indoor airs. Okay, now it is there. Okay, here is the unit. So concentration is ppm times molecular weight divided by this factor. This factor account for the partial pressure as well as RT. Everything you put, you just get this. And also, okay. So for how do you get there is what I explained it. Okay, so you change ppm to partial pressure, then partial pressure to moles per liter, and then moles per liter to milligram per liter using molecular weight. So for anything, you can use this formula, okay, because this account for, as long as that same temperature, okay, because that's RT is related to temperature. So related to 25 degrees Celsius and what atmospheric pressure. If it's different term, then you have to change it. Okay, you were asking question, yeah?
Yeah, sorry. So just to clarify, so we use this constant if they don't tell us the temperature, but if they do, then we calculate.
Yeah, if they say 1 atmosphere and 25 degrees Celsius, then use this formula. And I'll never ask you questions with his different temperatures in exams, because it's just basically I already tested you for that in the midterm, so I'm not retesting the same thing. It's the unit conversion. Okay. Okay, so everything else is given, and if you see the second question was, what is the steady state concentrations? Steady state concentration, if you see the formula, C infinity is SV CAN divided by this. You know K equal to 0 and Ca equal to 0. So this will become S times S over Vn. Everything is 0. Okay. So this one basically Ca equal to 0, K equal to 0. So that means you get the answer is, you know the source concentration you calculate in A. You know the N value, you know the V. Those are given in the exam. This is V, this is N. You calculate it. Okay. So I think that will help you answer some of the example questions in the homework. And also, again, this is the same thing. Again, another similar unit. Everything is given. You just have to calculate. Notice that the concentration here is radon concentration is picocurie per meter square, and the answer will be also same concentration unit. So you just have to use the same unit. And if you want to know what is that unit means, I probably skim through it. This is your picocurie is 2.2 radioactive decays per minute. Okay, it's like this many. All right, so let's take a break for 10 minutes. When we come back, we solve the question related to outdoor pollutions. Okay, and then also I'll go over some other question and example. And we'll have extended office hours, so I'll stay here long enough for you to answer any questions related to homework, even because there is no class after this schedule. So hold on. So we'll meet you at this is 101. So I'll meet you at 1:13. Not 1:13, 1:11. 10-minute break. So all it's given is the concentration. Okay, ppm is, which is basically volume of carbon monoxide by volume of air. And because you see PV equal to nRT, what it means is the pressure is also equivalent to the volume. Okay, so this one, if the partial pressure of the air is 1 atmosphere, okay, the partial pressure of carbon monoxide. So another way to say is, if your carbon monoxide pressure will be, partial pressure will be this. Okay, so P carbon monoxide of partial pressure would be 20 times 10 to the minus 6 times 1 atm. What means is that the pressure exerted by carbon monoxide is so small, right? Because air is filled with many other molecules. So that's the partial pressure. So now, what is the concentrations? You are asked what is the concentration of carbon monoxide in milligram per liter, right? Milligram per meter cube. That's what you are asked. So let's calculate that. Concentration is basically, so I'm just going to write PV equal to nRT. N by V is P by RT. N is mole, okay? Volume is the things. So this would be, so that means this would be, and then if you want to write more milligram per liter, so this will be N by V divided by, okay, another way to write it is, this is moles per meter cube is P by RT. Okay. And your goal is to change to milligram per meter cube, right? So this is a 1 mole is a, what is the molecular weight? Molecular weight is in gram. So you want to change to milligram, which is 10 to the power 3 milligram. So this will give you, that means milligram per meter cube P by RT molecular weight okay. So if you put all these value there that we calculated everything, then you will get these answers. I'll also send the page where they did it in the homework in the chapters if you don't find it, because they have done it somewhere in the chapters, not just they expect you to know this one. I think if you don't find it in this chapter, look for the chapters in the very first class, the unit conversion. That's where they do this kind of calculations. Okay, so now the last exam questions is related to outdoor pollutions. And so here we are not going to derive any equations. I'm just going to put the equation, but explain it. How do you interpret different things? So outdoor pollutions, there are many different type of pollutions. It could be because of traffic. Traffic is a source. So that's basically on the surface, ground surface, as opposed to here. This is basically an industry where the for instance, you're cooking things, you have a smoke tower on the home, that's release that pollutions above the air. The reason that stack height is much higher is because you want the pollution to be away from the where people can inhale. So as you see, if you're standing here, there's a release very above it. And so that's the reason the height is there. Okay, that increasing height will diminish the amount of pollutions at the ground level. And then when the smoke is released, it has some certain energy. That's why you see there is a projectile velocity, these directions. So if you see in this here, there is a velocity here. Because of that, the smoke itself rises a little bit when I exit the system. So that extra rise is delta H. That's the height it rises before it lose all its kinetic energy. So this height is effective stack height. That's basically the physical height of the stack as well as the extra height because of kinetic energy. Okay. And it doesn't go far away because gravity will pull it down. So it's basically the half mv square equal to mgh. When you add those together, you get the delta H. We are not going to solve for it, but there delta H would be kind of, this H will be given this stack height. So you don't need to solve for delta H. Okay. So this H is given, or you solve for it by other equations. And so just know that effective stack height is where the pollution is released into atmosphere. And then what will happen? Those pollution will spread because of dispersion, because air itself has Brownian motion, or the air particle itself has kinetic energy, so they are just going to disperse. That's why when you smoke and release the atmosphere, the things will spread. Okay, even though there is no wind speed, because of the vibration of air itself. Because there is a temperature, that's why it's vibrating. If you go to absolute zero, which is not 0 degrees Celsius, 0 degree Kelvin, there air will stop. Okay, there is no motion, only at that temperature. We'll never have that one here. Okay. At that temperature, even the electricity is a superconductor, so there is no resistance. Electricity there will be no energy loss because of the vibration is what causes the friction. That's why the electricity loses energy when you transmit through any conductors. So your cell phone charge will stay forever, all that, but will not survive because that 0 degree Celsius, 0 degree Kelvin is basically blood will stop flowing, everything will stop, right? So there is we can achieve that physically. But point, I'm saying that this is a temperature. That's why things disperse. So that's why you have to account for how much it disperses. And that depends on a lot of factors. How much it disperses is related to temperature for sure. Also, it depends on the wind itself, because if the wind is blowing, they will also make the turbulence. So that's why this dispersion is related to velocity of wind as well as the temperature of the atmosphere. So atmospheric conditions does matter when it comes to how much it's going to spread. How far it's going to go is related to velocity of wind, because that's what is moving them forward. Okay, so this is the wind speed. That will make it how far it's going to go. How low or higher it can rise is related to atmospheric condition, which is temperatures, pressure, all that, as well as the velocity. So these are the dispersion factors we're talking about, sigma g. That's the dispersion in g directions. There is also dispersion in the y directions. Y means, the across this wind, the paper or the screen, because it can spread this way as well as up and down. It's move like this. Okay, and it's the same formula for the dispersion, because it is symmetrical. Either it move this way or that way, it doesn't really matter. So those dispersion will tell you whether this concentration will reach the ground level or not, because if there is no dispersion, they are just moving there, they are not coming down. So because of the dispersion, we are going to inhale certain far from the location where it's released. So this is very important, because imagine you are buying a house near a power plants or near a plants where there is releasing smoke. So downstream, you don't want to live because of these issues. Not only that, how far you can live will determine what's the concentration you're going to inhale. Okay, because not only is diluted with time, there are also the dispersion because of that. So anytime the concentration at any times, any location is a function of time, which will determine how far it has moved because of wind speed, and also dispersion, how much it dispersed. Okay, and we are going to calculate those numbers. So this is the concept that you learn. So let's look at the answer. This is the answers. Okay, at any locations, I didn't solve the mass balance equation, but if you can check the book if you want to know how to solve it. It's the same thing. You did it for advection dispersion equations and you solve it, and this is the answer. So concentration at any time and location. So this is the, as you see, this is a space X and Y. Okay. And the reason why there is no G is because you are calculating G equal to 0, ground level. Okay, CXY, concentration at ground level. Okay, that means now G equal to 0. Okay, because that's what you are interested in, how much you are going to inhale. It doesn't matter how much is there somewhere else, right? So this is, I'm just writing here, ground level, that you are interested in. So that's basically the source amount release. Q is the amount of pollutant release, emission rate, divided by velocity. Velocity at that height, UH. This means what is the wind speed at that height, that stack height, because that's what is going to drive you that directions. So I'm just going to write it here. There are two terms here, so we can talk about what those terms are. So this term within the bracket is basically concentration at the streamline. Okay, so when you see over here, what is the concentration here at that line is basically this value. Okay, and if you see what is happening here is that as you move further and further, that emission is going to be diluted because they are just expanding, right? And so that dilution is related to velocity, because this is just moving into airspace which has no pollution before. So that's why it's the velocity, that emission is diluted by the velocity, because that's just expanding and becoming diluted. Also, they are diluted because of dispersion of X and Y, Y and G directions. It's either moving up or on the side. So that's why when you take into account that, that's basically dilution factor. The amount of emission is diluted by the virtue of things are moving, expanding. And then the exponential term is related to how much is basically is going to be dispersed because of the atmosphere. So this is the dispersion because of g directions. This is the dispersion because of y directions. Okay. This one is the concentrations in center line. Which is here. But it doesn't matter. You will be asked to calculate that entire concentration at ground level. So you are just using that equations. So now for the homework questions, you'll be asked what is the C value, okay? You'll be given the emission rate. So that's always given. You also know the stack height, H is given always, okay? What would not be given is U. This is not given. This is not given. This is not given. Okay. Because that's not directly given. You will be estimating using a table because those are related to atmospheric conditions as well as the reason why the velocity is not given is because you can't really measure the velocity at that height. Okay, you are not going to install a sensor right at that locations. What you do is you install a sensor somewhere you can reach out. So maybe on top of your at certain height, let's say at 6 feet you are going to install the sensor and measure the velocity of wind. Then you can extrapolate because wind has a certain profile in streamline motion. You can extrapolate what's the wind speed at different height if you know at one height. So that's why you can measure UH. This is the formula. If you know the height velocity of wind at any height, you can calculate velocity of wind at certain other height, which is UH. By using this formula, H is the height, which is stack height, G is the location where you are putting the sensor to measure the velocity, and P is a factor, dimensionless factor that you can calculate based on different conditions. Because if you know it's a cloudy conditions or sun is there, then obviously there will be more dispersion because there is heat that will disperse it. If it's cloudy, it's not going to have much dispersion because the air temperature is low. So all that stability factor is going to account for that. So as you see over here, based on whatever the stability class, unstable, very unstable, the P exponent is going to be 0.15. Very stable, the P value is going to increase 0.6. Okay. And how do you know whether A, B, C, D? That's something you based on the cloudiness and the solar light. For instance, if say that the wind speed at location, let's say you are measuring the wind speed at certain height, it says that this is the wind speed 3 to 5, then you are going to use that unit. And then you see, okay, what kind of solar radiation, is it sunny day or not? Based on that, you can choose whichever number. Okay, so for instance, whether it's a moderate, you can either use C or D. Okay, whereas a strong C, slight D, and then if it's a cloudy, it's basically D. So once you determine what's the stability class, then you are basically calculating P. So P, use table 6 and 7. Basically, 7 will tell you the conditions. Condition, which is wind speed, and sun, which is basically related to temperature. Sunny, obviously there will be more dispersion. So you can calculate wind speed using this formula. Okay. Now, how do you calculate the dispersion? So for instance, let's do example. Suppose an anemometers at a height of 10 meter above the ground measures the wind speed at 2.5 meter per second. So velocity of air at certain height is so h equal to 10 or g equal to 10 meter, and at that height you measure 2.5 meter per second. Estimate the wind speed at an elevation of 300 meters. So h is 300 meter. Rough terrain, if the atmosphere is slightly unstable. So the condition is given, saying slightly unstable. This is the conditions. So then you are asking to calculate velocity at that height. So if you see, velocity of that height is h over g times ua. So h is 300, g is 10 meter, ua is 2.5 meter per second. Then p value, slightly unstable. So look for slightly unstable conditions. Okay, the c value is 0.2. So p equal to 0.2. This answer? Yes. Get the answers. Okay. And how do you calculate the dispersion coefficient? As I said, dispersion coefficient, it depends on how far you are from the locations. So when you go for different location, the x value is given because how far you are down the downstream. So this number is usually given. So you put that value. All you have to do is calculate dispersion at y, and there is something wrong here. There are two terms. Y and g. Okay, I see. So you can use either of them based on the wind speed and stability. This is the two equation. You can use sigma y. Sigma y is same as sigma g because basically it's going in the either directions. Okay, and so what you can use is this value ABC, and so you already know the stability what condition it is, and then you just look for in this table. Okay, and if the x value is less than 1 kilometer, use this one. If x value is above 1 kilometer or how far it is from, you use the other equations. So use the table 8. 8 or 9. Another thing you can do is you can also use this equation, this graph. If you know how far the distance is from, let's say here, distance from the source, meter, you can calculate sigma g. Okay, and just basically put it value, and if you know what condition A, B, C, D, based on how stable, you can do that. Okay, so I think this is I mean, as I said, there is nothing there. I cannot ask any question here as a long question. Everything is already given. You just plug the value. And I will not ask a question on final related to calculation like this because it's all about spending time finding those numbers. And I'm not testing those. I'm testing your thinking in final more than actual your ability to do more tedious calculation by looking at table and all that. Okay. So I'm testing you that for the homework. So homework are longer because of that reason. So this is example. Let's see. This is a homework example. It's already in the book. So I'm not going to do it here because it's already there, and it's just the exact same process. You just follow that condition, all that factors. For instance, I'm going to write it here. So this is basically height, at height where you are measuring velocity. So this is VA or UA. This is written UA. And it says cloudy summer day. So that's the conditions. Condition will take A to D, A to E or something, whatever that factors. And predict ground level concentrations at 4 kilometers directly downwind. So this is X. So another thing, it says that a 40% efficient 1000 megawatt coal-fired power plants emit sulfur dioxide at a legally allowable rates of 0.6 pounds sulfur dioxide per million BTU of heat into the plant. So basically the emission is given. So if you see that formula, this Q is given. Okay. So Q says, you just have to do a little bit more calculation. Q equal to 0.6 pound SO2 by million BTU of into plant. So that means every time it create million energy, that BTU of heat, you are producing this. But now you have to use this equation to say how much billions of energy it is producing. Okay, 40% efficient. That means it has to produce 60 more to get the 40 energy that's needed. So that means the actual production is, the capacity is 1000 megawatt. That means it's producing 1000 megawatt. That means it has to produce a lot more because it's going to waste 60% anyway without even using it. So the actual energy conversion is going to be 1000 megawatt divided by, let's see, right? So 40% is, I'm sorry, 40% is basically 1000 megawatt because 40% efficient. So that means it's producing in that 40%, whatever it is producing 1000 megawatt. So that means actual production is 100%, the 60% is wasted. So that means the total energy is 1000 megawatt. Now you have to change megawatt to BTU. Okay, megawatt to BTU. How much that would be? So that's power to heat energy. So go back, check in that examples, because they have given that formula, conversion formula, BTU to megawatt or watt. Then you can change that. And so that will give you the Q value. Okay, because per million BTU. So here it will tell you this answer will be BTU. Then you put it there. Okay, for 1 million BTU of energy, you are producing 0.6 pound. For that much billion of BTU productions, how much is emitted per day? Okay, check the example. It's already given there, so I don't want to solve it. Okay, so I think we run out of times to solve the example problem, but I'll solve in the next classes. Okay, but I want to show you where things are. So example 1, I gave you a questions, long questions. As you see, there is a formula. It's very similar to homework. Okay, and that answer is, I thought I'll solve it, but that's okay. You will see the solution here. Okay, so this solution is given. Same thing here. Another example: sewage treatment plants is releasing BOD, all that stuff. Related to wastewater treatment plants. We'll solve it next class. But if you want to know the solution, it's here. Same thing here. Okay, example problem similar to homework. We'll solve it, some of them, but the solution is here. Another question. This is a typical question in the last finals. You see this final related question. So that's also solution here. So I gave you a lot of questions related to homework questions, and you should be able to solve them. Okay. What I didn't give you is a question similar to hardness solutions. Okay, because that hardness removal is something that I didn't give because I solved it in the class. But if you need more of those examples, I can solve next class. Okay, just let me know. And also at the end, you will go back. This is the solutions. This is the last year final. One thing I wanted to say, remember that last year final, there is no hardness question because that was part of the midterms. This year final, you will have a hardness questions. Okay, so if you check last year midterm question, the hardness question is there. So just solve that questions because that will be in the final. And usually I don't put air quality questions as a long question because of that whole reason. So even you see over here, that's because there was no hardness questions. So this number 2 question will be mostly a short questions, very short questions related to something. But you will have a hardness question. So I'm just going to replace it here. In this final, you will have hardness question. This will be a short question. Okay, so you will not get any air quality question as a long question. You'll have a wastewater treatment questions. Okay, that could be one long questions. That's also related to wastewater mass balance. Yes, the finals, everything same way. You'll have 48 hours or something to answer the final question. I mean to submit your solutions, but your duration will be much longer than your midterms because in final I really don't want even the time to be constrained. So I'll set the question for 3 hours, but I'll give you something like because the original final is 3 hours, not 2 hours. So I'll set the question for 3 hours, but you'll give in like 5 hours something. So you have time is not a factor. Okay. Yeah, that's it. So you will have 2 homework questions. That will be part of your final. The homework 6, which is released today. The air quality question will not be part of the final as a long question. Okay, that's a short question. So you have wastewater treatment, drinking water treatments, as well as waste treatment, hazardous waste treatment. Those are the 3 typical question will be in the final. Okay, and what else? Yeah, so we'll solve many questions in the next because we have 2 classes remaining. Those 2 classes in the first half, we'll talk about example sustainability, how you apply this thing for different. So it's more on concept. I'm not asking question on that, so that you know what you learn, how you can apply in the real world. In the second half, we'll solve some final questions. So these are the questions we'll solve. Okay, so you have practice for at least I'll solve 1 question for each long question type so that you know how to solve them. So last week, come to class because you'll be working together with each other because I'll set the question. I will not immediately solve it. I'll let you solve on your own for 10 minutes before even I do anything. So you'll learn a lot more by working with each other. Okay. Have you posted document with questions similar to the homework? Yes. These are basically the slides. This is on the slides. I put it on the slide. And I'll also annotate a slide. I'll release it. Okay, so that's all for the class today. Again, take more chocolate, whatever you can. See you next week. Happy Thanksgiving.